I saw how people are talking to them.
It's not.
It's not so
Stay. John, let me go, kid. Did you put the academy?
I will have to go to. I will have to use the computer to find that.
You'll love it.
I don't.
No, mine is
Bad thing.
Defending the proposition.
You're still doing that, right? You're still going to debate, right?
It's here in Abu Dhabi.
October 27th.
Right?
Yeah.
I like to be able to work in a job that I can legally get Honestly, that was my main motivation.
Is this on? Hello everyone, if you all can take your seats, we'll get started. Do you want to sit or stand? Just stand and talk. Hi, my name is Michael Hanger. I am the chair of the Student Senators Council and University Committee on Student Life, which is NYU's overarching student government. So thank you all for coming to our first of the semester and final town hall with President Sexton. I'll just say really briefly before we start that this is probably my 12th town hall with John. My first one actually leading it, so I'm a little bit nervous. And I've been up here for many times, but these have been amazing for me and for I hope everyone else who's either in the room or in Abu Dhabi, Shanghai, or around the world to be able to talk with you personally. So just wanted to thank you for providing the students and us this opportunity for this discussion. So with that said, let's just get right into it. As I
say something.
Okay.
So, just to give you some sense of historical context, we started these town halls when I was named, it was May 2001. And we've done 4 a year at least since then. The first few years we did 1 and 4, I would go to some of the dorms and so forth. But it's interesting, I was reflecting coming over, since this is my last one as your president, that the big issue in some of those early town halls, we discussed it in each of them, was whether or not the United States should invade Iraq. And just think about that for a moment, okay, and how different things might have been if a different road had been taken. I hope you all watched the presidential debates last night. Very different tone in the debates last night from the debates that have occurred over the summer. And that's about as close as I get to a political statement in these town halls, except on issues that are of importance to our community. One of the issues in the early town halls was whether I should go to the bully pulpit and speak out and take a position on the then possible invasion of Iraq. And it was in response to those town halls that I wrote a reflection, which is called The University as Sanctuary, which is still on my webpage. You can go, I've written several reflections over the years that try to give a detailed kind of pathway, position, and explanation. And it was an iterative process with those early town halls that particular reflection developed. And my position is basically that it is the task of the university president and the dean and the schools to make sure that there's a full conversation on all issues. And if the president or the dean takes a position inside those issues, unless it's something like student financial aid or a higher ed issue where inherently you're supposed to be out there for the community, advocating on behalf of the community, that for me to take a position on, let's say, the death penalty draws down on the capital of the whole university in a way that's inappropriate. That the job of the dean or the president is to make sure that all views on the death penalty are heard and debated civilly, and it's a contest of ideas, since that's the essence of the university. That's not a position that most university presidents take, but it's one that I've taken both as dean of the law school and as president for the last 28 years. January 1st will come and Andrew Hamilton will be president, and I can begin to articulate my political viewpoints. And I'm very much looking forward to that, since I do have strong political viewpoints. He's trying to knows that I love debate, and he said we want to create a debate culture, and we think it would be a good thing if a faculty member and a student would debate two students on a subject of interest. So somehow I agreed to do it before January 1st because I thought it was debate, and the culture in debate, for those of you who are competitive debaters, is that it's you're obligated in competitive debate to take the affirmative one round and the negative the other, so that you understand the strongest arguments on both sides. And I think it's because I don't necessarily, it's like when I teach my classes, some of my students are here. If it's a case on religion and government in the 1980s, it's likely if it was in the Supreme Court that I was a lawyer in the case, because during the 1980s, I was involved in most of the religious liberty cases in the United States Supreme Court. So I always point out to them that I wrote the brief on one side or the other. It doesn't mean that that is my position today. It doesn't even mean it was then. It means that that was my assignment as an officer of the court then. I kind of view this in that way. Although he has me debating the affirmative on the proposition resolved that organized religion can be and is, on balance, a force for good in society. So we took what some people think is the tough side of that proposition, given the wars that are going on in the world right now. But that's October 27th. What's that date?
October 27th. Doors open at 5:45 in E&L, 4 p.m. You're all welcome.
If you have to sign up in advance to come?
No. If you come at 5:45, we have enough space for everyone.
Okay. So you told me 500 people had already signed up to come. So he's trying to lure me. He thinks this will get my name out as I move to my next iteration. So anyway, we're open, and Michael, it's back to you.
Yes, I found my own microphone. So essentially, as I said, we're live streaming this, not only for those who might be in class, not paying attention, here or around the world.
Wait a minute, so there are people watching us while in class? Is that what you're trying?
I would never do it, especially not in your class, but I won't speak to others.
Okay. And a load of the folks around the global network.
Yes, yes. And so we've also invited folks, if they couldn't make it, to send either kind of during the town hall or in advance questions using the hashtag #AskJohn. So we have a few of those, but I'd like to alternate between the in-the-room questions and the digital questions. So if anyone has a question in the room, kind of feel free, if you have a mic, just come on up. Don't be shy, and you can ask John anything.
It'd be nice if you told us just who you are. Yes. Okay, we're ready. We're starting. First person up. Okay.
I'll kick it off here. My name is Alex Mays from NYU Shanghai. I'm the senator from NYU Shanghai to the SSC. And my question is really about, for Shanghai people specifically, kind of prefacing it with the 2 points that, for NYU Shanghai students studying abroad, New York is very much just another site in the eyes of the university, or at least the college. What we're looking at is, how do we respond to Shanghai students who are in New York, or maybe they're not in New York, and they're told that there isn't enough space for them at the New York campus? How do we respond to this idea that they might be, feel disenfranchised from the NYU brand if they're told you can't come to this campus?
Well, first, with any of our study away sites, there's a limited capacity. So if you're a student in New York and you want to study in Prague, you may not get your first choice. This is a reality. Now, when one talks about New York, you'd say, now wait a minute, there's got to be enough space in New York. There are a lot more folks there than there are of us. We over here in China have only 600 students at this point, and only about a quarter are studying away right now. So wouldn't we be like a drop in the ocean of NYU New York? And that would show a lack of awareness of the conversations here on campus over the last 5 years about how crowded things are in New York. And that plays out in all kinds of ways. It plays out in the number of seats in the library during study time. It plays out in the number of people that have to wait to know that they're in the dorms in a given semester, usually at the beginning of the fall semester, by the time spring comes. So it shouldn't be thought that there's an infinite capacity in New York. The reason that we're doing the Coles building, okay, so there's a building that's going to be started within a couple of months. In Coles, it means shutting down the Coles Gymnasium. It's going to be replaced in 3 or 4 years with a glorious, air-conditioned, still better gymnasium, and a lot else for students, including another community student lounge, including more classrooms, including residences. But the students that are here, while that gymnasium is closed, especially the student athletes, but not only the student athletes, are going to be making a sacrifice forward. Okay? In the same way, I point out to you and to them that the students that were here for the 4 years that began with them seeing their student center on the corner of LaGuardia and West 4th Street torn down to be replaced by what we now know as Kimmel. And they went for 4 years without a student center. And we have other gymnasia, you know, you need to understand New York doesn't have an infinite, it obviously has a greater capacity than, for example, Prague or Paris or Accra, but it doesn't have an infinite capacity. And especially if, for example, many of them that come are coming either for classes in the School of Engineering, the Tandon School of Engineering, or in the School of the Arts, and those classes may not have as much space in them. So it has to be worked out in a way that creates a proper balance. And it might mean waiting a semester, not doing it in the fall, but doing it in the spring. I think there's a general Dhabi in Shanghai. That's something that has to be worked out, considering what's Pareto optimal, including other students, including the students here in New York. Okay?
Thank you.
Do we have another question in the room? Yeah. Okay. I saw you earlier. You wanted to ask the first question, but Alex happened to be closer to the mic. So.
Hi, I'm Lila. I'm a senior in politics. And so, as you know, the University Senate passed a resolution in favor of fossil fuel divestment this past spring. And the university is currently invested $139 million in the coal, oil, and gas industries, and is literally profiting on the climate change, you could say. We want to know if you will step up to be a leader before the end of your presidency and endorse fossil fuel divestment. And I know before you started, it's a political statement, is what you will say, and that you don't have the power over this decision. And I'd like to just quickly preface this with saying, we know that you don't have the power, ultimate decision-making power. We're asking you as a position of authority with great influence, and personally you as a man, not necessarily as an institution. And secondly, that I think we would all agree that you have made some very political decisions in your course of the time here. I don't know if you can argue that you could had made no political decisions, because there are so many parts of running a university that are just explicitly political. Would you please endorse possible divestment?
No.
No?
Now, I could be just like Hillary Clinton and just let it sit there. She got all kinds of plaudits for that. But first, let's make a couple of things on the record very clear, because sometimes in advocacy, folks can get caught up in their belief, their genuine virtuous belief in what they're arguing, and they drift away from a full presentation of what the record is. So, have you been involved from the very beginning?
I have not, but I have a good sense of what the history has been.
So then you're aware of how actively I have, from the beginning, been offering what I would call coaching assistance in terms of how to get this done, going back to the very, very first time that this came up in a town hall. And I've invested personally in the beginning, not recently, because recently it's been handled by other people. We agreed, the advocates and I agreed, could work with them on a more detailed and full-time basis. But I put hours into meeting with your predecessors to try to explain to them the processes for getting this done. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, oh, I recognize absolutely. You've been actually quite helpful with the bureaucratic process. We're actually asking for something different. We're still, excuse me, please don't interrupt me. We're still going through the board, and we're still planning. We're simply an endorsement of you as a public figure who recognizes that climate change is a very real and pressing issue for NYU students. I mean, Sandy was not long ago. People saw the people being evacuated out of our hospital. And it's a pressing issue that is very pertinent to our university. So we're not asking for an exception to the bureaucratic processes of the university. Just literally your endorsement.
So at the law school I teach a course called procedure, civil procedure. The word bureaucratic sometimes has a pejorative meaning, which I don't think you intend. I think you mean to refer to the normal processes and procedures of the university. So I have tried to help you through those processes and procedures and made various people available, like Marty Dorff, who worked very hard with you on that. Let's just be sure we understand what the issue is. The issue isn't somebody's position on climate change. The position is, the question before the House is whether the university should use its endowment to make a political statement about climate change. So after January 1st, I likely will be very vocal on things like climate change. I mean, it is a pressing issue of the day, there's no question about it. I've said that much in talking about the importance of multidisciplinary and global research, because this is not a problem that's going to be solved by one university or one nation. So I've gone as far as nobody can deny, in my view, that climate change is a critical issue of our time, perhaps the existential issue of our time. And I think that I likely will be making statements about it after January 1st. But that's not the issue that you're pushing. Okay? The issue that you're pushing flows from that and goes to another question, which is, should the university, this university or any university, use its status as a university, as a corporate whole, not the individuals within the university, using such things as its endowment to make political statements that inherently state the position of everybody in the community. And what I've said to you is, and what I say in my reflection, which I trust you've read since you're involved in this, is that that kind of statement should be made by the university as the university only when it is visibly shown through the normal processes of the university that it's virtually the unanimous position of the university. And that's what I've been trying to coach you to do. So after January 1st, whatever statement I make is irrelevant to that, okay? My position after January 1st on that second issue will still be, it should be very rarely done. And it should not be done, for example, and I have to say this in the honesty of the dialogue here, it should not be done by interfering with my time with my students in my class, as was done last week, okay? When the time that I spend with them after class was interrupted by people with a video camera and a group.
That was after your class. We
No,
waited
it's the time after my class that I generally spend with my students discussing what's going on in class. It's not part of the class itself, but it's part of my sacred time with my students. And I think that your leader that evening, at least, was understood finally that it was an inappropriate thing and apologized for it there on the spot. And it shouldn't be done by a journalism student sending me an email and saying, for my journalism project, I would like to interview you, and I'd like to do it on divestment. And I want to make it clear I'm not part of NYU Divest, when on that person's Facebook page it's clear that they're part of NYU Divest. This is not good advocacy.
That was
So,
not none
no,
of
I
our
just
work.
see. I view this as all of us here. My job is to try to encourage the kind of discourse that that Dino's trying to encourage in that forum. There are ways to try to persuade, and if the object is to try to get me to help, then you don't do it through techniques like I just described. You do it this way, or in the way we've done it before. But the answer is still no. I'm not going to make a statement, because I cannot make statements while I'm president of NYU that people say, oh, well, that's not the president of NYU speaking. It's a blur in the minds of the public. And that's precisely why you want me to make the statement. You don't care if I make a statement after January 1st. As you said to me the other night, we want you to do this while it means something. And well, it only means something because I'm the president, and that's exactly the point I'm trying to make.
I agree. I would like to point out 2 points. One is that by investing in these industries, our investment is making a political statement. There's no doubt about that. And additionally, NYU has, as a university, taken political statements and divested from apartheid in the past. Furthermore, I think you could argue, I know in University of Sanctuary you require full consensus in order to make any sort of, extra political statement, correct? I think that you can argue that you have made very political statements, such as the creation of the Abu Dhabi campus and the 2031 plan, that had very distinctly zero consensus among the school community that are explicitly political acts. And I really don't think I recognize that you are not making an endorsement of any kind in favor of fossil fuel divestment, but I would like to make those points that we have a very political investment, and as a university in the city of New York, where our own mayor, Bill de Blasio, has called for coal divestment, and he's an alumni. I think that there's no excuse for making a apolitical argument because it simply doesn't hold.
Okay, I'm going to answer this, and then we're going to stop because yes, you've had your chance. I just there's several things that I think are wrong with what you said. The first is, and let's be clear about this, we are not invested in fossil fuels.
We are.
Excuse me. We're not invested in fossil fuels. As has been explained to you many, many times, we're invested in hedge funds who do not have, in the case of $139 million, a small percentage of our endowment, do not have a rule that they will not invest in hedge funds, and they move through things. But we own no stocks directly. We are not like Stanford or Harvard or whatever in that regard. We are in blended funds, and those blended funds may be involved in fossil fuels, but we are not invested in fossil fuels. Second, we do not make a statement that we're in favor of fossil fuels or against fossil fuels when we make no political statements with our endowment. It's, for example, my policy for the last 28 years of not wearing a button. Okay. Now, I was asked, I was the only one of 12 deans of the 12 law schools in New York City who would not sign a petition to an NYU graduate, Rudy Giuliani, who was mayor at the time, protesting his cuts in legal aid. I was asked to sign that petition by the president of legal aid at the time, the chairman of the board, who had given a gift to the law school to name a chair professorship in my honor. And when he called me, I said, Tom, if I make this statement, then every time I refuse to make a statement, I'm making a statement. But as long as I make no statements, I'm not making any at all. The minute we say yes to you, then when the next group comes, if we don't say yes to them, we're saying that your issue is more important than somebody else's issue. That's the point I'm making about the investment in endowment. Now on your other point, people can politicize anything. But when we opened our campus in Abu Dhabi, we opened it for clear reasons that have been explained again and again. We did not open them to endorse everything that the government in Abu Dhabi does, or that the people of Abu Dhabi do, any more than I endorse everything that the government of New York does, or people in New York do. So it's exactly the same point, okay? It's exactly the same point poured over. If I were to begin to come out and make such statements, then the minute I made them, it's called negative pregnant in logic. The minute you make a statement, then if you refuse to make a statement again, you're saying that other issue is. Now you're into the politics business. Anybody can politicize anything. They're politicized. You're absolutely right. Plan 2031 was politicized, and disgracefully so in a way that has cost this university money, because in the 2 years we waited for the litigation brought by a few to go to its defeat everybody knew it was going to go to 2 years ago. We made
Further.
I'm reading this word for word, so I'm not at all in this. It's from.
Do you believe it or?
No, not yet. Maybe one day. It's from. Actually, no, I won't say that. Okay, the annual increase in cost over the past 5 years is 3.9 in tuition, 2.1 in student fees. Do you see NYU being affordable anytime soon?
Do I see NYU
being affordable anytime soon?
Well, NYU is affordable now, and I would point out some just basic facts, and that is that each tuition increase that we've had over the last 14 years, which has been my time as president, there has been a greater percentage increase and a greater actual increase in the amount of money going into student financial aid. The result of that is that 14 years ago, we were meeting 22% of the student need. Now it's, not counting Abu Dhabi or Shanghai, it's close to 60%. So we have dramatically increased the amount of financial aid that is funded by tuition increases. This is not a high endowment school. For those of you that are new to this, that building over there, 1 Fifth Avenue, used to belong to the university. In 1976, we sold that building for less than the cost of one apartment in that building today, because we had to stay alive. New York City was going bankrupt, and NYU was going bankrupt. So we started off in the 80s, which may seem like a long time ago, it's before most of you were born, but it's 35 years ago, with a negative endowment. A negative endowment. Okay, we had to suspend payroll for 2 weeks. So we've been digging out from that since then. And I'm very proud of the fact that during my time, we have, on a per capita basis, close to triple the endowment of the university on a per capita basis, which is the way financial aid is given. So you're endowment per capita. But we've tripled it too Our present per capita endowment is about $75,000, $80,000 per student. Comparable, Harvard's is $2 million per student. Princeton and Yale are $1.5 million per student. Columbia is $700,000 per student. St. Francis College in Brooklyn, where I was chairman of the religion department before I went to law school, is $150,000 per student. We're in the bottom half on a per capita basis of endowments out there, and that has consequences in terms of financial aid. But we work hard with our students about it, and I think it's shown in the effects of the amount of need we're meeting. The median student graduating from NYU last year had total aggregate debt for the 4 years of less than $10,000, median. Now that includes those that are not on financial aid. If you take the students that are only on financial aid, which is about 52% of the class, 52% of the class, the median debt upon graduation last year was under $30,000 total for the 4 years, under $30,000. And that's for the best education in the world. Now, you can keep costs down, but you can't provide the best education in the world. You can't provide the wellness exchange. You can't provide all of the things that we provide by keeping costs down. And if you take a dramatic step to keep costs down, let's say freeze tuition, for example, you've just given Bill Gates' and Donald Trump's kid a scholarship. Okay, what we do is a lot of tuition-funded financial aid for students. And the result is that when I sit with the research university presidents twice a year, it's the 60 leading research university presidents, I can give a number that begins with a 2. I think it was 22% this year of our entering freshman classes were Pell Grant eligible. Whereas the comparable number at schools like Harvard and Princeton and Yale begins with a 1 and is like 12 or 13 or 14%. And this year we had over 20% of the entering freshman class that were first in their family to go to school, to go to college. So, look, the one thing I've said this publicly, I've said it over and again, I don't know that anybody in the room, well, Mark, you were at the last trustees meeting, John Beckman was at the last trustees meeting. I ended the last trustees meeting, which is my next to last meeting with them, saying the one thing I thought most had to be done over the next 10 years was getting our financial aid to quadruple what it is today. It's been my passion. It's why we have the Momentum campaign. Every single ask that I make to a donor begins with the first priority being financial aid for students. But the reality is the reality. The reality is that we were where we were, and we're making our way out of that even while providing the best education in the world. And it's a very simple formula, okay? If you start cutting quality, you can keep tuition down. But if you don't cut quality and you want to provide quality, then it's got to come from some kind of subsidy. And the governments are withdrawing subsidy, and we don't have the endowment subsidy that other schools do. We're trying our best to provide. So thankfully, students come, they're wonderful, and they manage. I'll just say one other thing. I wrote a reflection on this, okay? So these reflections they're not postcards, they're not research papers. They're out of this kind of conversation. And if you really are interested in this subject, I would ask that you read the reflection. It's about 50 or 60 pages. And it goes into every jot and tittle and makes proposals for national reform on this. Because this is where I can be political. Because this is right in the heartland of what I'm supposed to be advocating for the community. And I'll tell you this, it may sound immodest, but I don't think anybody would deny it. There has been no university president out there in the organs of power urging greater financial aid for students. And the reflection, which I got out last November, has had an impact, and has had an impact on policy and policy in Washington. And you can see in the developments around the pay-as-you-earn program at the federal level and the changes that President Obama has made, some of that impact. Where I think the nation should go is that students should get into the school that they're best matched with, and they should, if they have to, borrow to go to school, but they should never have to pay more than 10% of their income in repaying those loans, and after 20 years the loan balance should go away. And 10% of their income means if in a given year, at 10%, by the way, above $50,000. So the first $50,000 you don't pay anything. If you make $60,000, you pay 10% of that next 10,000, which would be $1,000 loan repayment. That's your loan repayment for the year. Okay, that's where we should be going as a matter of national policy, and we're getting the people to move there. And if you look at Hillary Clinton's education proposals, you'll see that this is a large part of what she's proposing. But it's not going to be solved at the maintenance of quality simply through mechanism. It can't be. Thanks.
Okay. Is there anyone in the room with a question?
We have plenty of time, but I do have to leave at 5:45. I just want folks to know that, so you don't think, in case I'm in the middle of something, I really have to leave at 5:45 because I've got to go uptown for a law school thing.
Thank you. Yeah.
We are.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Eric. I'm a member of the Incarceration Education Coalition. I've worked at NYU for about 2 years, sort of moved discriminatory barriers for formerly incarcerated people applying to NYU. We actually spoke to, on my notes, I wrote notes right now. So we spoke at a town hall in spring of 2014. And we talked about how we'd like to have a meeting with you, and you guys had a similar thing, and your response was...
Just talk a little more slowly, because with the mic, it may not be getting...
So we spoke to you about wanting to meet with you in person, or meeting with administrators of the board, and you said that it makes the most sense to go through the democratic means, basically going to the university senate and going through the official channels. And we thought this was a really good idea. So we did that, we went to the student senate and actually got official support from them in terms of our demands for abolishing the box from NYU's application. In that process of discussing with the student senate, faculty senate, all the democratic means, we're also engaging in conversations with the administration. However, while this was happening, the board basically made a policy change without involving us in the conversation or any of our allies who we believe are experts in terms of discussing what formerly incarcerated people need to go to college. The policy change did not actually abolish the box. In fact, it was hardly a reform, and it basically said we do a box blind reading and then basically screen for the question anyway. And again, this was not involving the people who made the conversation happen in the first place, and we're going through all the democratic means. Additionally, one of the major experts on policy for formerly incarcerated people trying to access education is the Education from the Inside Out Coalition. We recently spoke with them, and they expressed disapproval with this policy change. Even though the people we spoke to cited them saying we are doing what they wanted, they said actually this is not what we wanted, and we sent a letter to you and the board of NYU explaining their disapproval and saying that they advocate for fully abolishing the box from the application. So my question to you is one, will you connect us with Andrew Hamilton and continue these conversations and not lock us out of the room the way we were when the board made this policy change? Number two, how can it be expected that student organizations can make any type of democratic change when these types of policy changes are occurring behind closed doors and they're not involved in the conversation that boards are engaging in, and the boards are not actually held accountable to the university senate or any democratic union?
There's several. I'm using that. It's not something that we would do. What you want us to do is argue.
You could,
unless we stop using the Common App, which would be impossible with 60,000 applications.
Right.
Okay. I mean, we get 60,000 applications. So.
Right.
The other thing I want to make clear is we have a policy, and my understanding was that there was a lot of conversation between your group and Linda Mills and first Randy, and then after Randy left as admissions director. Mm-hmm. Linda Mills is the vice chancellor that oversees this. After Randy left, then with MJ. So there's been an enormous amount of conversation about this.
We're not spoken with MJ. We spoke with Linda Mills and two deans that were appointed to discuss this.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's right. There were two deans that are involved. That's right.
Sherry Lee and Suzanne Walker.
Sherry Walker is the dean of Wagner and the dean of Gallup.
Mhm.
And they're still involved in conversations on this. As of at least last Friday, they were still involved. Has anything happened since Friday on this?
Both Susan Walker told us she's no longer involved in this and said that she doesn't think she is either, and we're very afraid that we're going to lose communication with any administration.
I absolutely know that Sherry Gleed is still involved.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about losing communication. So that's step one. We got that. Did you by any chance, were you at the very first town hall this was brought up?
The first
Like
one,
2 years ago?
That was the one we brought it up to, yeah.
Okay. Did you read the New York Times last Sunday?
No.
About Al Haber?
No.
The student that I mentioned to you then, that was the founder of the Fortune Society. Do you remember my mentioning
I
that
did, I
at the
remember,
time?
yes.
Because my first year here, I taught a student. You should go back to Sunday's New York Times and read the story. He's now a lawyer, but he did 18 years hard time.
Right.
He was admitted to NYU Law School. He was my student. I was his witness on the Character and Fitness Committee. I'm not stating a personal position on this, but you can make inferences, okay, from that behavior, and that were reported in last Sunday's New York Times. Okay, so go look at it because it's an interesting coincidence. The behind the scenes decision to which you refer, I believe, was a decision that was made in response to your group's conversations with the admissions people, Linda, Sherry, Suzanne at the time, that we said we would not make our admissions decisions based on this. The information right now is on the Common App, but it's not information that we're going to use in our admissions decisions. And I would have thought you would have thought that was good.
That's not what the policy says. The policy says there'll be a box blind reading, and then with all those applicants, we say we can choose whether we want to admit you based on their criminal record. It's the same as the original process.
No. There's a box blind reading.
Right.
You're now admitted, right? So we made in the box blind reading a decision that you're in, notwithstanding the fact that you're Al Haber, who's been 18 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then we look, because you checked the box, we look at the record to make sure that we feel that we're not putting our community in danger. Okay, in other words, there's a provisional admission and then an examination of the record to make sure on the facts of your case. So in Al's case, there was no problem, and in some cases there wouldn't. So it's not that you're not admitted if you check the box.
That was never the original policy either. The original policy wasn't that you would be admitted, it was the idea that universities
But
had power to
are you against the
deny
box
something.
blind reading? That's what I'm asking.
Yes, that's why IC did not co-sign on to that, and why EIO Coalition
Well,
did not.
but this
did not
isn't
support that.
about we signed on and we didn't sign on. This was done in response to your request that, as I understand it, the chance, the issue here is that people who have done time should have an opportunity to, having rehabilitated themselves, to move on to careers the same way you and I should, right? That's the goal here. It's not to put a notch in the belt of your organization or whatever. So whoever came up with a good idea, if it's a good idea, it's a good idea. So I'm asking you, do you think that's a good idea?
To have a box blind reading without a fully abolished box, no, I don't think it's a good idea.
To have a box blind reading.
Yes, and the university should not have the power to deny someone based on a criminal
Okay,
record.
then that's a different issue. Then you're
That's
saying.
exactly the issue we're talking about. That's why I want to abolish the box.
Okay. Then you should continue your conversations with the administration that are still going on. Obviously, when Andrew Hamilton comes, and he's not going to come till January 1st.
Right.
So it's not going to get decided by him before January 1st. But I would suggest you keep working with Sherry Lee, who is very much still involved in this. Okay?
Thank you, John.
Any questions in the room? Yes, in the back, yeah. Hi.
My name is Shana. I'm
Say it.
Shana.
Shannon. Yeah.
I'm a sophomore.
In what school?
I'm in the liberal core program.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm Jewish, and like every other Jewish student at the school, of which there are significantly more than most private secular schools in New York. I've had to make the decision between going to class and keeping my holidays. I went to class both years that I've been here so far because I was afraid of missing important class material and afraid of being at a disadvantage to the other students who attended. So on behalf of myself and all other Jewish students that have had to make that decision, I'd like to ask, why aren't we allowed to spend our New Year's with our family and keep our fasting day without sacrificing our education, the best education in the world?
So I can give you the answer that's given when the calendar is discussed. The calendar is done by the Senate each year. This question hasn't come up, to my knowledge, for the last few years.
That's surprising.
Pardon me?
That's surprising.
It's not surprising. It's because it's, I think, considered by and large well settled. And I can explain to you the reason why it's well settled. I mean by that, I can remember it being discussed at least twice during my nearly 30 years, in the Senate. It's come up and there's been a full debate of it and so on. That doesn't mean we couldn't have a debate of it again. But the reason that we have the policy we have is because anytime a holiday is given, whatever the reason, it triggers an expansion of the semester because there are a certain number of days the school has to meet in order to meet Regents' requirements in the state of New York.
Well, a holiday has been given. I mean, winter break doesn't just happen to fall on Christmas.
Okay. Well,
And spring break doesn't
Can I go
happen
back?
to fall on Easter.
Can I go back?
Yeah,
That's
sure.
what I was saying. Okay. Anytime a holiday is given, it means that the school year has to expand. Okay. Now, whether one gives religious holidays or not, and when one goes down that road, one has to think not just of one religion, but many religions. Is kind of an overarching question. Now, you point rightly to, you said Easter. I don't think that's accurate because spring break tends to move with the private schools, spring break in New York. Sometimes Easter's in that spring break, sometimes it's not. Sometimes the Jewish holidays are in that break, sometimes not. That's completely random. You're right that as school, that Christmas and New Year's versus Braun religion to have Sunday closed. Muslim merchants made the argument that the Sunday closed 200 years ago, 300 years ago, religious in. As I say, every university, you said the City University and Yeshiva as well, in having winter break occur sometime toward the end of December and into the beginning of January. And yes, that does capture Christmas. It doesn't capture other religious holidays. But that's the only example, and it has that kind of Braunfeld versus Brown background to it, where a religious holiday even falls within one of our designated holidays. So what I do in my class, which is on religion and government, okay, so I take this issue seriously. What I do in my class is offer alternative classes to the students that can't make it. That was always my policy at the law school. I impose the burden on myself.
But is that every professor's policy?
It's what we encourage the professors to do.
But do they actually do it, all of them?
No, certainly all of them don't do it.
Do you consider that fair?
Listen, if we had a 100% attendance rule, as I do, for example, in my class, unless you're sick, okay, I wouldn't consider it fair. But we don't have a 100% attendance rule, and my observation is that most students don't attend 100% of the time. So students manage somehow to get caught up. There are teaching assistants, things like that. I'm not saying there shouldn't be an accommodation. I start off, look, my family's Jewish. I'm the only goy in my family. Teach my class, even when I'm but I'm trying to explain to you what's behind it. If you want, to examine it, there's a very clear place where it's examined. It's set in the Senate every single year. The one statutory authority that is decided by the Senate and no one but the Senate is the calendar of the university. The president doesn't decide it. The Board of Trustees doesn't decide it. It's the Senate of the university. Okay, and you know, but I'm trying to give you the logic of what we do, because we are highly diverse. You know, this year, of my 20 students in my class, the plurality religion is Hindu. So this place is now I was on American Magazine is a Catholic intellectual magazine, and they have a radio show, and I was on that today, and they referred to NYU, I don't know if this is true, as having more Catholic students than any Catholic university in the country. I think we probably have more Jewish students there. It used to be an old beer commercial about New York City. We have more X than anybody except Y. You know, we have more Chinese people in New York than any city other than outside of China. You know, it could be true. But that means you have political power. So try to change it, although I think you're going to run into the argument that I've given you, that if we start going down that road, that we're going to have, you know, all kinds of holidays being given away.
I don't see any other university having that problem.
Oh, you mean every other university gives away the Jewish holidays?
No, I mean the ones that
You
do
didn't mean
give
to say
them.
that.
No, I mean the ones that do don't have that problem.
Well, the ones that do may decide they want to have school in August, or you know they don't want to give a holiday around Columbus weekend, which we instituted 10 years ago at this university at the strong request of the students that the pressure was building up too much and they needed 4 days around that time. Otherwise, the tension would be too great, and it was in the context of student wellness. Now, I'm not saying that argument wins automatically. I'm not defending this because I didn't make this decision. I'm trying to give you the reasons for it, and other universities may not care about that. But I'll tell you, I care very deeply about student wellness. So it's a competing factor, and certainly if we gave the Jewish holidays off, you would argue for giving off Christian, Muslim, Buddhist holidays. And then what do you do with the person that comes in that says, I've just created this religion? You know, and I can't be here on Wednesdays. And I'll tell you, everybody in the room is laughing, but the students that have been students in my class, and there are 2 or 3 of them in, those cases are cases that the Supreme Court has had to deal with. And once you say to the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims and so forth that they can have their religious holidays off, then you are discriminating. You know, it's interesting. It's a version of divestment. Think about it for a second. It's the same argument that I was making on divestment. Once you do for one, if you don't do for all, okay, then you're in trouble. And do you want to be the one to decide which religions are going to get their holidays off or not?
Again, I haven't seen other universities have
Because they expand their calendar or they break the law and they put their students' degrees at jeopardy. Or they're a Catholic university and they say, hey, guess what? You want to come here? You get the Catholic holidays off. You don't get the Rastafarian holidays off. Okay, but I'm just telling you, this is, believe me, I have a PhD in this. There's a huge quagmire out there into which you're walking if you start doing it. That doesn't mean you can't win politically in the Senate. I'm telling you exactly where to go to win. So, get the Brompton Center. But it's like my mom believed there should be prayer in the schools, as long as she could write the prayer. So be careful, what you end up arguing for.
I'm not asking for prayer in schools.
Okay. You get my point. You're an NYU student.
I feel like I'm in class right now. I'll just say,
Did I represent Bromfeld correctly?
You never assigned that case. So
but you're supposed to know about it from the other cases you've read where it's discussed.
Of course I do. I'm just saying I haven't read it in detail.
Okay, do one of those. I got to worry about my getting up.
I'm watching Look Out for you. Don't worry. If you are interested, though, please contact us about moving through the Senate with that. So there's some background to this question. The Yellow Ribbon Program is a federal program that makes top colleges accessible to military veterans by providing matching funding for the balance above what the GI Bill covers. Currently at NYU, only the School of Law participates fully in the Yellow Ribbon Program.
Currently?
Only the School of Law participates fully in the Yellow Ribbon Program, making tuitions free for veterans on the GI Bill. So the question here is, One, why does NYU not fully participate in this program? And two, will you commit to make yellow?
So, that the statement that only the School of Law is participating in the Yellow Ribbon program is accurate. I know that I have myself, with the relevant people here, actively urged us to participate in the Yellow Ribbon program. And if you'd asked me 5 minutes ago were we in it, I would have said yes. But if we're not in it now, then I think that that's something that should be taken up immediately. But I think it should be obvious to everybody. I'm not in a point in my life where I feel, I got until January 1st to get the things done that I took this job to do. The one thing I wish I had done that I haven't been able to do is raise $10 billion for financial aid. I wish I had done it. I've done a lot in that regard. I've worked, I don't have a guilty conscience about it. I think I've done an awful lot in that regard, but I didn't get it done. Okay, and as I said to the trustees at the last meeting, this is the thing that remains to be done that I care most about if you want to know what has to be done. But other than that, I'm not going to be making decisions. This is not like the transition from Adams to Jefferson, where we're appointing the midnight judges so we bind Andrew Hamilton when he gets here. It wouldn't be the right way to do it. I have too much respect for him. We talk all of the time. He's getting up to speed in the issues. And if we aren't fully in the Yellow Ribbon program, I'm sure it's an issue that we'll be very happy to entertain.
John, we are in the Yellow Ribbon.
Say again?
We are fully in the Yellow Ribbon, undergrads, grads, part-time, and folks.
Thank you. That's what I thought was the case, but I get in all kinds of trouble if I say it, and then I go back and they say, don't you remember the discussion we had? Please come on.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah, come to the microphone. Tell them who you are.
Hi, Roberta. I'm from Kazakhstan. I'm doing human resource management at SPS. So the only one school that doesn't have a name yet, so we're hoping. SPS.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got rid of the continuum SPS, but then someday we'll be named after someone.
And do you have your religious holidays off?
I'm Muslim, I'm not Jewish, but that's okay. Yeah, we occasionally have regular holiday coffee with our dean. So
talk slowly because the folks in Abu Dhabi.
I'm sorry, my Russian accent is so obvious.
No. Listen, I know what to complain about an accent.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I know you about that. I can't resist telling you this. So last weekend, Andrew Hamilton and I are in Singapore together. But it happens all the time. He's working at Network University for the dedication of Yale National University of Singapore. And they had about 50 presidents in a symposium there beforehand. And the first time he spoke, he says to this group, which is literally from around the world, he says, this is the last time I'll be speaking. Now, I'm very happy to identify himself as Oxford and NYU. And he said, this is the last time I'll be speaking to you this way. I'm taking lessons on developing a Brooklyn accent. So you're going to like this guy, but go on.
Oh, yeah. Cool, yeah.
Don't worry about accents.
Okay, cool. So I just have, first of all, I'm very happy to be here, and I just have a question. I'm not going to ask for a scholarship or anything. I'm okay.
Well, I was going to give you
yeah. So what are your future plans, actually? I'm just curious what you're going to do after you leave the position. Would you be still teaching at?
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
I'm very curious.
Because I am a human being.
What are you going to do?
Thanks a lot. Okay, I'll answer that. And I think I really probably have to go. Okay, so it's a good way to end. Thank you. So first, it's going to be a great deal of fun. I don't know if any of you have heard this story, but my son and I, in 1990, were at a New York Giant football game. And we were in the owner's box. The Tisches had just bought the New York Giants. And they invited the relatively new dean of the law school home. And in the box was Barbara Streisand and Dan Rather, who was then at CBS News, and so forth. And we're driving home in the car, and my son turns to me, and he says, you know, Dad, you're a comma person, C-O-M-M-A. You're a comma person. I said, what's that mean? He said, didn't you notice when people came in at halftime and to pay homage to Mr. Tisch, he would say, oh, you know Barbara Streisand, oh, you know Dan Rather, oh, you know John Sexton, comma, the Dean of NYU Law School. He said, your presence had to be explained to people. And it's a very profound concept that I've lived for the last 28 years. It's come up in the conversation tonight. There's the left-hand side of the comma, which is John, the husband of Lisa, the father of Jed and Katie, and so on. And there's the right-hand side of the comma, which is the president of NYU. And I have been privileged to serve for these 28 years, and I get joy from it every day. It's not as if I'm tired or I've lost the zest or whatever. But I'm excited about moving on and being myself again. And my essence, I'm the only university president, and I was the only law school dean that teaches a full schedule. In fact, I teach more than a full schedule of classes, because once I start teaching a group of students, I can't stop teaching that group of students. I don't know what I'm going to do, because I'm already up to 6 courses this year. And next year they want me to teach at the law school. In fact, I had 7 courses this year, because they just added one at the law school. And most faculty here teach 3 or 4 for the year. I'm going to be on the faculty. I'm going to have more time with my students. My time with my students will be interrupted by protesters or whatever. An ambassador in any way you want to send. So I hope he doesn't send me to these things I've avoided going to for 28 years. But it just occurred to me that may be what he asks me to do, although I think he likes that kind of thing much more than I do. With my outside time, the former Prime Minister of the UK and I, a man named Gordon Brown, and I have been for years growing in our concern. Just listen to these numbers. 85 million children in the world are primary and secondary school age and have never met a teacher. No one is even pretending to educate them. They're in the slums of India, the villas of Brazil, they're in war zones, they're in abjectly poor countries, they're in refugee camps. Gordon is the UN High Commissioner of Education, and he and I are together creating an entity that'll have 2 parts. This is not yet public, so I'm not going to give you names or anything else, but we're volunteering our time. And part of it, which will be my principal responsibility, will do advocacy for these children. We'll try to find funding for pilot projects and then showcase those projects. We'll do consulting to people as to what's out there, because the actors, there are a lot of good people running around in a disaggregated way. There's a need for coordination. And most of all, we'll incessantly advocate with governments. There's the funding for education at the local, national, and international level has been flat for the last roughly 10 years, even as health has gone up. So there's about $20 billion a year. Hi. How you doing? Listen, I'm right in the middle of a student town hall. I'll call you in about 15 minutes, okay? Hello? Love you. There's now about $20 billion a year in money in health, whereas for education it's only about $2 billion a year. And every time there's a health project, they take money from the education. So anyway, we're going to work on that. The strategic group will be my principal responsibility, and then we will together identify what we're calling alpha projects, which are places where we think immediate intervention is both possible and necessary. So our first alpha project, which doesn't exactly fit the prototype, is going to be with Syrian refugee children. And principally the Syrian refugee children that are still in Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. And we're kind of out front on this. You know, the situation is too dire first. I mean, Gordon Brown is spending almost all his time, and I'm being as much of an assistant as I can be after January 1st. I'll be more available. But there are 1.2 million kids in Turkey. Visiting Cuba and residents, I shouldn't say that. Please don't put that in any public record. I'm going to be the John Kluge Distinguished Professor in Residence at the Library of Congress for a semester. It's some Cuba thing. And then the following year, I was going to have my first sabbatical. I've been teaching for 55 years. I've never had a sabbatical. I was going to have a first sabbatical, and my oldest grandchild and I were going to travel together, and I was going to homeschool her. But my son and his family happily are moving back to New York City, and that's a lot of change in her life. And I think this thing will be, with Gordon and the children, is probably going to evaporate my sabbatical. So I probably will be teaching. And then a year after, I'll return to faculty.
Okay. But if you consider teaching at SBS, welcome.
Say?
If you ever consider teaching at like SBS, we have like employment law, like a subject called employment law.
Okay.
Yeah. Why not? Why not SBS?
Yeah. I would be incompetent to teach a course of employment law. We want somebody to call it better. Because there were right answers. My daughter is a lawyer, and she took classes like that where there were right answers. I said, honey, I never took a class that the first two words on the final exam would be, it depends. So constitutional law, you know, you argue this way, that way. But employment law, that's real stuff. There are statutes involved and so on. This is my last time with this, so thank you all very much.
And we got it right on time. Thank you for everyone who came and everyone who joined us in Abu Dhabi, Shanghai, and around the world. If any of these questions or concerns that you have, you want to discuss further, please reach out to us at student.government@nyu.edu. And other than that, have a great Wednesday.